Pitting out of your shirt?
Sweating out of my shirt.
I've heard both ways.
Blow your socks off.
Blow your socks off. Pitting out of your shirt.
Did you say whenever I'm ready?
I'm ready.
You guys ready? Cool. So I'm here to talk to you about the Lisfranc case study that I have been studying. So Lisfranc injury is any injury that causes a disruption of the ligaments in the tarsal metatarsal joint. Just as you can see here, right here, I'll explain that here in a little bit. Quote from Dwayne Dewey: Lisfranc injuries are rare, but they are important. They account for 4% of all injuries in collegiate football. It's kind of an old study, but it still seems like it's prevalent. It's been cited in lots of different articles I've read, even the ones that are recent, so it's still prevalent. Stage 2 and 3 Lisfranc injuries require surgery. I'll get to the stages and the classifications here in a moment. And rehab lasts between 21 and 31 weeks, so it's a very debilitating injury, so that's why I feel like it's super important and it's prevalent to us. The bones we're going to be talking about are the first metatarsal, second metatarsal, medial cuneiform, and the middle cuneiform. The soft tissue involved with the injury is the Lisfranc complex of ligaments, the intermetatarsal ligaments, and the plantar aponeurosis. So as you can see here, metatarsals 2 through 5 all have these intermetatarsal ligaments connecting them together, but metatarsals 1 and 2 have an absence of that ligament right here. The way that they are connected is via the Lisfranc complex. So the medial cuneiform is attached to the first metatarsal, and then the medial cuneiform is attached to the base of the second metatarsal via these Lisfranc ligaments. Here's a frontal cut view of it. There's 3 ligaments. The dorsal one is the thinnest of them. There's an interosseous ligament that's super thick and strong, and then there's a plantar ligament that's also very thick and strong. So the Lisfranc ligament is extremely important to the biomechanics of the foot because it anchors the base of the second metatarsal into its spot. Second metatarsal is the longest metatarsal, and it's very crucial to keeping the integrity of the longitudinal arch and the transverse arch. It's called the keystone of these arches, and that's in reference to Roman arches. So this is a Roman arch, and you see how these stones are all cut in ways where they're wider at the top and narrower at the bottom. And this is the keystone up here because when force drives down on the arch, all the bricks are forced together, are pressured together, and all the force transfers to that top stone. That's why it's called the keystone. I'll explain that here in the transverse arch. So this is the metatarsals. Even though it says cuneiform, that's not right. So this is a cut MRI. And so as you can see, this is sort of an arch-like right here compared here. And you can see it's right at the top, so when there's downward pressure from your foot, all of the force is driven into that second metatarsal. Because it stretches more proximally into the tarsal bones. And then the Lisfranc complex is going to anchor this very crucial base of the second metatarsal in its spot. So if the second metatarsal is the keystone, the Lisfranc ligaments are the cement that holds these stones together. In the longitudinal arch, this one might be even more important. The Lisfranc ligament is also the keystone. It comes up to the peak of this arch. And so when your foot is in plantar flexion and your toes are in extension, kind of like this, if they're planted on the ground, your plantar aponeurosis is going to be on full stretch and pulling the 2 ends of the longitudinal arch together, while downward body weight is pushing them apart. So at the very top of this arch, this triangle right here, is the Lisfranc complex and the base of the second metatarsal. So it's having to combat these 2 really powerful forces and keep the integrity of the arch. That's why the Lisfranc ligaments are so crucial to biomechanics of the foot, because they basically they're the cement that hold the integrity of the arches of the foot. So they can be injured in a couple different ways in sport. There's one where a plant and twist mechanism where you guys can't see me, so I'll walk over here, where your forefoot is planted like this, and your hind foot is going to, which is your calcaneus and your talus, is going to rotate outwards and kind of put a valgus force on the midfoot, and that pops those Lisfranc ligaments just based on where they are. The second most, or the second common mechanism of injury in sport is a crushing force. So you're in that same position, and you'll have someone either fall on the back of your foot, or something happens where you jump off like a high surface and you land like this. And since the second metatarsal is the longest metatarsal, it's in contact with the ground, and it's going to be the first metatarsal to get hit to get the axial force this way. And it displaces dorsally because the dorsal portion of the Lisfranc ligaments is the thinnest. So basically it breaks at the weakest link. Here's some pictures of what they look like. This is going to be like a deformation you'll see in the Lisfranc ligament. This is Ben Roethlisberger getting that crushing force right here. He's plantar flex, toes in extension, gets crushed. You're going to get some discoloration at the bottom here, and here's just a diagram of what that crushing force looks like. So if you have injury to these ligaments and your medial arch is compromised, when you go to push off, instead of pushing off, like say this is my foot and this is the midfoot, the tarsometatarsal joint, when you push off and it's nice and sturdy and strong, it's going to be like pushing off with a wet noodle. It's just going to bend and you're not going to be able to do anything. So I mentioned stage 2 and 3 injuries earlier. These are the classifications set up by Nunley and Bertullo. They're based on diastasis between the first metatarsal and the second metatarsal. Stage 1 does not require surgery, it's just a sprain. There's no diastasis, no compromise, the arch is still intact, just some damage to the Lisfranc ligament right here. Stage 2 is a complete rupture of the Lisfranc ligament, but the arch is still intact. And there's a diastasis of 2 to 5 millimeters. Stage 3, which is the one we're going to be talking about here in a moment, there's complete rupture, diastasis of 2 to 5 millimeters, and the arch with weight bearing completely goes away. This is what happened to a 21-year-old running back. He planted off of his right foot on his toes. His hind foot rotated, and he went down the field complaining of foot pain. The ATCs rushed out on the field, and they found that they took him off the field for further evaluation. Upon evaluation, he presented midfoot pain. He was unable to take off his shoe, so it had to be cut off. There was mild swelling, discoloration. When he attempted to weight bear just on the table, his arch went away and he complained of pain. With a modified Kleiger test, which is basically like a 4-foot valgus test, there was pain and laxity. So he was referred to a physician the next day for weight-bearing radiographs. This happened on Saturday. Sunday in the morning he went to the physician for radiographs. And this is what they look like. As you can see right here, there's diastasis right here between the first and second metatarsal. So this is where the disruption occurred. This one's a little tighter, and this one's just slightly malaligned. He had 2 options for surgery. One option was all transverse screws that go in between all the articulations, basically compacting everything together. But that study has been shown to create long-term ill effects of the foot, arthritis, general foot pain, because it damages the articulations that are already damaged. So he went with the second option, which is dorsal plating surgery that you're going to see here. They begin by making an incision kind of like right on top of the first metatarsal, and they move everything apart and put a plate over the first metatarsal and the medial cuneiform, and the second metatarsal and the second cuneiform to hold those together. And then there's a what the heck? And then there is, in addition, there's a transverse screw that runs the track of the Lisfranc ligaments to pull these 2 bones back together. At the end, it looked something like this, except for this is on his left foot. It happened on the right foot. You can see that transverse screw there and the 2 dorsal plates. Immediately after surgery, he was at home, pretty much bedridden, for about 10 days. He elevated his foot for 22 hours a day, and he was told to maintain hip and knee motion from doing standing leg curls and seated knee extensions, and doing straight leg raises and isometric plantar flexion, dorsiflexion of his ankle against the post-op splint, basically just as allowed by pain. 10 days after surgery, his stitches were taken out and he was placed in a walking boot. This allowed him to take off the walking boot and allow for more range of motion of his ankle and his toes. The hip and knee exercises stayed the same, and he started doing toe splaying right there just to start getting abduction of the toes back into toe motion. And he also started doing BAPS board for ankle range of motion, probably like level 1, plantar flexion, dorsiflexion. At this point, ultrasound was complete every single weekday until return to play, and game rate and IC were complete every single day, including weekends until return to play, to minimize swelling and decrease pain. At phase 3, this is when he began arch strengthening with marble pickups and towel scrunches. The hip and knee motion exercises were progressed slightly. He was adding clamshells. He threw an ankle weight on for straight leg raises. Most of these exercises are basically to prevent atrophy until he can actually start strengthening. Russian E-stim was started at this phase to get his plantar flexors to activate again. And at phase 4, he began partial weight bearing in the boot, walking short distances, but not doing. And then at week 6, he started doing actual 2 feet exercises in the boot. He could do some squatting in the boot with the physio ball and hamstring curls in the physio ball. The surgical site became less tender, so he could do 4-way ankle TheraBands. Monster walks started later, but progressive resistive exercises were placed at this point. This is where actual strengthening actually began, and atrophy and prevention of atrophy sort of ended. At this point, since he could put weight on the foot, he began doing stationary bike for cardio and deep water running. In the pool, he was in chest deep water. It allowed him to bear less weight, and he could do other exercises like lunges that put a little more pressure on his toe. He could do calf raises, and he's learning how to walk again correctly in the boot. Also, joint mobilizations were added at this time, dorsal and plantar. And those were completed every day until about week 18. At week 5, or at phase 5, 8 weeks post-surgery, he was half-weight bearing, and this is when he started pool plyometrics. He began skipping, doing line hops, and this is where he started doing calf raises on land as well, starting with assistance from a table. And then at week 16, finally at week 16, he got a single leg calf raise. At week 12, he was completely out of the boot and full weight bearing. I guess that's the next one. He was full weight bearing at the end, and that's when he began lower extremity strengthening again with his team. He quit doing it in the treatment center and went back to team workouts. Plyometric exercises on land started at week 14, just very light, little hops, nothing super explosive. Squat jumps because he could jump off of his heels, and then there was slide board exercises as well, you'll see here in a moment. And then pool plyos still stayed in. Phase 7 was 16 weeks post-surgery. This is when he had to have the second surgery to remove the screws. This digressed him back to about week 8-ish in his progression, but the recovery was much quicker. By week 17, he was halfway bearing in the boot and was doing 2-foot PREs again, and he continued to do plyos in the pool. I added slide board exercises in there because he doesn't have to plantar flex with this plyometric exercise. It's plyometrics for the knee and hip and not for the ankle. At 18 weeks post-surgery, he was back to full weight bearing after the second surgery. This is where he started some 2-foot plyos again. And this is an example of like bound and holds that he did. This is another balancing exercise that was added in. And he returned to lower extremity lifting with his team. At 20 weeks post-surgery was when he could start running again. This is where he just started doing light jogging, about 50% for 50 meters. This linear running progressed from week 20 to 24, from 50% to 100% by the end of week 24. Balancing was an everyday thing, and stretching was an everyday thing. Running was every other day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. He began doing ladders at this time too. Week 22 is when he started lateral running and cutting. this started at 50% and progressed to 100% by the end of week 24. This is when he returned to plyometric exercises with his team as well, and some half-speed route running. At the end of week 24 was a simulated game to determine his return to play. This simulated game consisted of 10 drives, which consisted of 5 plays each. Each play was either running with the ball and cutting, catching a pass with a route run, or simulated blocking. There was 20 seconds of rest in between each play and 5 minutes of rest in between each drive. This simulated what a gameplay would be like if he were to play a full game. He completed the game with only mild soreness and full function strength and just a little bit of fatigue as well. So in conclusion, Lisfranc injury is an extremely important injury. It might not be common, but it still is something that we need to have a plan for, just like we do for like slap tears, ACL tears. We need to develop a plan that is put into place, like Dr. Rains gives us, because it is something that is going to debilitate someone. And any questions? Eli.
What determines whether the metal stuff gets taken out or not?
4 months is the earliest you can get it taken out. That's what the research told me, and the foot surgeon informed me of. That is when the ligaments are safely completely healed. That's like a safe time to take them out. Some people postpone them a little bit. That's why the study I read that said people ended up taking about 31 weeks to rehabilitate. They got their screws taken out a little bit later, just based on like scheduling issues mostly, but that's the earliest you can get them taken out. Kaylee?
Maybe I missed it, but they have all the metal parts and the screws in, but did the ligaments themselves heal on their own, or did they or was the metal actually connecting the ligaments back together with in between the metatarsals?
So the ligaments were healing on their own. It's not like an ACL that has to be kind of put back together.
Mm-hmm.
The ligaments, just the articulations of the bone just need to be compacted back together in
So that they
anatomical
have-
position, and the ligaments will heal.